What if the life that always seemed perfect turned into a nightmare? Emma Johnson, a 23-year-old young woman, never knew what it was like to lack anything. Born into a wealthy family in Houston, Texas, she had everything she desired: designer clothes, luxury cars, and trips to exotic places. However, behind the facade of glamour, there was an emptiness she could never fill. Emma, so immersed in her life of excess, never stopped to consider what truly mattered. Her father, Henry Johnson, a successful businessman, tried relentlessly to teach her about responsibility and the value of hard work. But Emma, with her rebellious spirit, ignored his advice, believing that money could solve all her problems. Emma's life takes an unexpected turn when she decides to drop out of college. As she becomes involved with the wrong crowd, she starts to plunge into a world of parties and drugs. Worried about his daughter's future, Henry makes a drastic decision. He cuts off her allowance and redirects the money to an NGO that rescues abandoned animals. Emma feels betrayed and decides to show her father that she can live without him. In a fit of rage, she takes one of the family's luxury cars and sets off on a journey through the vast Texan landscape, determined to prove her point. However, freedom quickly turns into a nightmare when, distracted by her phone, Emma loses control of the car. The vehicle skids and rolls over, leaving her trapped in the wreckage, injured and alone. Her father's words echo in her mind. "Life is fragile, Emma. You need to be responsible." It is in this moment of despair that the unexpected happens. A dirty, skinny stray dog appears among the debris. For Emma, who has always despised these animals, the dog becomes her only hope for survival. As the dog struggles to free her, Emma begins to see her life in a new light. That creature she used to ignore represents everything she had overlooked. The dog's determination to save her teaches her about compassion and resilience. When she is finally rescued, Emma reflects on her choices and the pain she caused herself and others. Her recovery becomes a time of personal transformation. Conversations with her father in the hospital make her realize how much her selfish actions impacted her life and the lives of those around her. As Emma recovers, she finds a new purpose by joining the NGO that rescued the dog that saved her. Emma's story is a journey of self-discovery, where she learns that the true value of life goes beyond material possessions. The dog that entered her life unexpectedly becomes a constant symbol of her transformation, reminding her that the ability to love and care is what truly matters. Emma discovers that true happiness is not found in wealth, but in connecting with others and embracing the responsibility that comes with freedom. As Emma recovered in the hospital, a mix of physical and emotional pain enveloped her. The wounds on her body were a constant reminder of her recklessness, but what troubled her most were the invisible scars that felt deeper. Her mind was filled with questions. How had she reached this point? What did she truly want from life? The image of the dog that had rescued her was etched in her memory, and despite the fear and sadness, she felt a spark of hope. The first challenge Emma faced was the visit from her mother, Margaret. An elegant woman with good intentions, Margaret had always been the peacemaker of the family. Upon entering the room, she tried to smile, but Emma could see the concern in her eyes. "Emma, my love, you need to take care of yourself. This is a warning. You can't keep going like this," Margaret said, trying to hide her tears. Emma felt overwhelmed by guilt. She knew her choices were hurting her mother, but she didn't know how to express it. Instead of responding, she looked away and fell silent, lost in her own thoughts. When Henry arrived, the atmosphere shifted. He entered with a serious expression, but his eyes were filled with love. "I'm here, Emma. We'll get through this together," he said in a firm voice. Emma felt torn. Part of her wanted to hug her father and apologize, while another part still resented him for cutting her off financially. The love he showed was undeniable, yet Emma felt trapped between anger and gratitude. Their conversation was tense, filled with unspoken words and repressed feelings. Emma's recovery was slow and full of ups and downs. As she tried to get out of bed, the pain in her body made her want to give up. Every movement was a reminder of her failure, leaving her anxious. But there was a new friend at her side, the dog that had saved her. He came every day, brought by a volunteer from the NGO. The little animal, whom Emma named Lucky, snuggled up next to her as if he knew she needed him. The dog's presence encouraged her to keep going, even when the pain seemed unbearable. Over time, Emma began to open up to the idea of joining the NGO. However, she soon realized that there was a new world ahead of her, one that required more from her than just her physical presence. The first time she went to the shelter, she felt intimidated. The volunteers were passionate and dedicated, and Emma questioned whether she truly belonged there. She met Anna, a young woman who had grown up in a shelter and dedicated her life to helping abandoned animals. Anna was full of energy and determination, inspiring yet intimidating Emma at the same time. "Are you ready to work?" "We have a lot to do," Anna said with an encouraging smile, but Emma hesitated. The pressure of being in a new environment and exposing herself to new responsibilities made her nervous. The physical challenges were clear. Taking care of the animals required strength and endurance, something she had neglected in her previous life. The thought of failing once again terrified her. Emma then remembered Lucky, who, despite his own challenges, never gave up on helping her. With that image in mind, she decided to take the first step. However, the fresh start was not easy. Emma soon faced her first real obstacle when one of the shelter dogs, a pit bull named Max, began to show aggressive behavior. The volunteers were worried, and the director of the NGO decided that Max would need to be sedated. Emma felt a tightening in her heart. She understood the necessity of the decision, but she couldn't accept the idea that such a wonderful animal could be treated so harshly. The confrontation between her and the director was intense. "You can't just give up on him. He deserves a chance," Emma shouted, her emotions overflowing. The director looked at her with concern, but Emma realized she was projecting her own frustration and fear in that moment. The director's words echoed in her mind. "Emma, you need to learn to control your emotions if you want to truly help." That phrase struck her deeply. Emma realized she was living in a cycle of impulsive reactions and needed to learn to calm herself, to reflect before acting. Through these experiences, Emma began to question her beliefs about life and what it meant to be responsible. Life wasn't just about having and spending, it was about caring, loving, and making a difference. And so, with each challenge, she found herself closer to a new version of herself, determined to face her fears and ultimately find true purpose. Emma was determined to become an effective volunteer at the NGO, but the reality of her limitations would soon become evident. Over the weeks, she struggled to adapt to the new routine, but the physical challenges were greater than she had imagined. Pain still accompanied her, and every movement felt like a reminder of her weaknesses. Moving quickly, bending down to feed the dogs, or even cleaning the kennels became a constant battle. Although she took deep breaths and tried to ignore the pain, frustration quickly turned into discouragement. On a particularly difficult day, a group of volunteers was organizing a fundraising event. Emma offered to help, but upon arriving at the venue, the pressure increased. People were running back and forth, and Emma felt lost amidst the hustle and bustle. Anna was there, always full of energy, but even her friend's presence couldn't dissipate the anxiety enveloping Emma. When the team began setting up tents and preparing items for sale, Emma realized she was once again overwhelmed. "You can do it, Emma. Just take a deep breath and do your best," Anna said, noticing Emma's hesitation, but Emma felt it wasn't enough. Insecurity grew within her like a shadow, and comparing herself to Anna's confidence only made her feel worse. Then, in a moment of desperation, she decided she needed to step away. With her heart racing, she went outside for some fresh air, but the weight of guilt followed her. She felt like a fraud, someone who wanted to change but couldn't keep up. However, in that moment of solitude, Lucky appeared, as if he knew she needed him. The dog approached, wagging his tail and looking directly into Emma's eyes. The warmth of his presence brought a small comfort, and Emma remembered why she was there. It wasn't just to help the animals, but to help herself as well. She needed to face her own internal battles. A few days later, as Emma tried to pick herself up, the situation at the shelter worsened. Max, the pit bull, was taken out of circulation after an aggressive incident. The director decided he needed a new home, away from the NGO, and Emma felt she had failed. The idea that Max wouldn't have another chance consumed her with sadness. She fought against the urge to protest again, knowing she couldn't change the director's decision, but the pain inside her grew. Frustration transformed into a burning desire to do something more, to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Emma then decided she couldn't leave Max's situation as it was. With Anna's help, she began researching temporary homes and organizations that could assist dogs with behavioral issues. With each piece of information she found, a new hope blossomed within her. The idea that Max could have a second chance became her goal. By sharing her findings with the other volunteers, Emma started to gain confidence. She realized she had the power to change the situation, even if it took time. But on the way to this new goal, Emma faced a setback. While she was trying to implement a plan to help Max, a new dog arrived at the shelter. It was a golden retriever named Charlie, who also had behavioral problems. The challenge of dealing with two difficult dogs at the same time felt overwhelming. Emma felt exhausted, and the pressure to help both animals left her restless. The fear of failing again haunted her, and she began to doubt herself. Emotional tension escalated when, in a moment of stress, Emma lost her patience with Charlie during a training session. The frightened dog reacted with a growl, and the scene was witnessed by other volunteers. Emma felt embarrassed and powerless, as if she were disappointing not only herself, but everyone around her. Anna's disappointed look hurt her deeply. "You need to be kinder to yourself, Emma," Anna said, trying to comfort her. "We all make mistakes. It's part of learning." But instead of feeling better, Emma became even more distressed. She didn't just want to learn, she wanted to be the solution, to be someone others could trust. That night, alone in her room, Emma reflected on her choices. The pressure she placed on herself was suffocating her. She realized that true change wouldn't happen overnight, and that every bit of progress would take time. The journey of self-discovery would be filled with failures and new beginnings. Determined not to give up, Emma decided she would face her fears differently. Instead of letting guilt overwhelm her, she would focus on small steps. After all, every animal she helped was a victory, even if small, and above all, she would learn to forgive herself. With this new perspective, Emma was ready to face the next challenge, determined to fight not only for the animals but also for herself. Emma felt more motivated after her reflections, determined to take small steps in the right direction, but life, as always, had its own plans. On a sunny day while she was at the shelter, an unexpected storm formed in the sky. The wind began to blow fiercely, and dark clouds gathered quickly. The shelter, which was usually a welcoming space, became a place of concern. Soon, the rain started to fall, and with it, the tension rose. The dogs, frightened by the thunder, began to bark and run from side to side. Emma, who was helping to feed Charlie and Max, felt her heart race. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Charlie, nervous, started to growl and twist in his leash. Emma tried to calm him down, but the pressure was too high. She remembered her promise to be kinder to herself, but the situation required more than she was prepared to give. Anna, noticing the agitation, ran to help. "Emma, we need to take them inside," she shouted, trying to organize the other volunteers. But amid the chaos, the situation intensified. Max, feeling the panic, began to bark aggressively. Emma froze, scared of the possibility of the dog hurting himself or someone else. It was then that the shelter director, Donna Rosa, took charge. With a firm voice, she calmed the volunteers and began to guide them. "We need to be quick. Let's go to the interior shelter where they will be safer." She moved confidently, and the volunteers followed her. Emma, still hesitant, finally joined them. Upon reaching the interior, Donna Rosa started distributing tasks. Each volunteer had a role, and Emma, even trembling, decided to help calm the dogs. She began to speak softly to Charlie, petting his fur and trying to distract him. But as she did this, the reality of her own insecurity hit her like a punch to the stomach. She realized she had been so focused on helping others that she had forgotten to take care of herself. The storm outside intensified, and the thunder seemed to echo in her mind. What was she really doing there? Did she have what it took to help those animals? In a moment of despair, she stepped away, looking for a space to breathe. The weight of guilt and insecurity made her feel like she was failing again. While she was alone in a corner, Emma heard a familiar sound. It was Max, who had calmed down and was approaching her, as if he was concerned. He sat beside her and looked into her eyes, conveying a calmness she didn't know she needed. The connection she had with Max in that moment shifted her perspective. It was as if the dog was telling her that, just like him, she also had her challenges and didn't need to face them alone. Emma realized that the pressure she placed on herself was unnecessary. She didn't need to be perfect. What mattered was the intention to help. The storm outside was merely a reflection of the turmoil within her. With this new understanding, Emma decided she would no longer let guilt bring her down. She was human, and making mistakes was part of the process. When the storm finally passed, and the shelter returned to silence, Emma felt a wave of relief. She stood up, took a deep breath, and rejoined the other volunteers. Anna's worried gaze, which had been watching her, transformed into a supportive smile. Emma smiled back, feeling that their friendship was unbreakable, even in tough times. As the days went by, Emma began to work on a new plan. Instead of trying to help all the dogs at once, she focused on one at a time. With Max and Charlie, she decided that every small progress was a victory. If Max responded to a command or if Charlie calmed down upon hearing her voice, those were achievements worth celebrating. In that moment, Emma understood that success was not about being perfect, but about doing the best she could with the resources she had. She learned that, just like the dogs in her care, she also needed love, patience, and understanding. The journey of overcoming and starting anew wouldn't be easy, but now she was willing to face it with courage and the certainty that each step, no matter how small, was worth it. The emotional impact of that storm and the revelation she had was profound. Emma not only committed to helping the dogs but also to allowing herself to be human, with her flaws and her victories, and with each passing day, she grew stronger, not only as a volunteer but as a person. After the storm, Emma felt that a new light had emerged within her. She had faced her fears and, in doing so, discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. However, it wasn't long before new challenges appeared in her path. Each day at the shelter, while working with the dogs, she realized that the struggle against insecurity was not over. In fact, it was just beginning. The first days after the storm were filled with small victories. Emma and the other volunteers established a clearer routine. Each person focused on a specific dog, making the work less chaotic and more rewarding. For Emma, this meant working closely with Max and Charlie. She began conducting short training sessions, praising every bit of progress, no matter how small. Yet, even with these changes, there were days when doubt still crept in. On one particularly difficult day, while trying to get Charlie to sit, he seemed disinterested and restless. Emma felt frustration rising within her. "Why is this so difficult?" she murmured to herself, feeling the tension return. Max's attentive and curious gaze made her stop. He was there, waiting. The connection she had formed with the dog helped her realize that patience was key. Instead of letting discouragement take over, she decided to take a step back and observe. "Let's try again, Charlie," she said in a soft voice. And so, calmly, Emma focused on making the training more enjoyable. With each attempt, even if they failed, she reminded herself that every aspect of learning takes time. This small adjustment in her approach made a significant difference. Charlie began to understand that playtime was also learning time. The simple act of taking a deep breath and allowing herself to be lighter became a big step in her journey. As the days went by, Emma noticed that it wasn't just her who was changing. The other volunteers also became more collaborative and understanding. Anna, always by her side, became an essential partner. They exchanged ideas on how to handle the dogs, and their friendship deepened. One afternoon, while they were in the shelter's yard, Anna said, "You know, Emma, you've really changed. You were so caught up in your insecurities before, but now you shine." Those words touched Emma deeply. She began to realize that her transformation was not just personal, it was influencing the people around her. However, not everything was easy. Over time, new obstacles emerged. One of the dogs, a mutt named Rufus, arrived at the shelter in critical condition. He was very scared and didn't trust humans. The team was divided on how to handle him. Emma offered to try, recalling the connection she had made with Max. "I can help," she said, feeling her heart race at the new responsibility. But as she approached Rufus for the first time, insecurity took over again. He growled and tried to back away, and Emma felt her old fear of failure creeping back. "I can't let this stop me," she thought. With a deep breath, she remembered Charlie and Max. Instead of forcing an approach, she decided to be patient. She spent days just sitting near Rufus, reading aloud and offering treats. Over time, the dog began to get used to her presence. Emma realized that, just like her, Rufus also needed time and trust. This new insight helped her strengthen her determination. Interactions with the other volunteers also changed. Donna Rosa, always attentive, began to notice Emma's evolution. One day, while observing the young woman's work, she said, "You're becoming a natural leader. Emma, the way you handle these dogs and care for them is inspiring." That validation made Emma feel that she was truly making a difference, not just for the dogs, but also for the team. However, even with the victories, there were moments of loneliness. Sometimes the pressure to be perfect still hit her. On a quiet night, after a long day at the shelter, Emma sat in her room and reflected. "I am enough," she whispered to herself. Looking at pictures of Max and Charlie on her phone, she felt that the journey was more about love and acceptance than about perfection. With each small obstacle, Emma was shaping herself into a stronger version of herself. She began to understand that life was a series of ups and downs, and that each challenge was an opportunity for growth. The path ahead remained uncertain, but with each new day, she felt more prepared to face it, not just as a volunteer, but as a person learning to love herself and accept her imperfections. Emma was at a turning point in her life, and her experience at the animal shelter had become more than just a way to pass the time. It was a journey of self-discovery and overcoming challenges. Every day that passed, she found herself not only facing the challenges presented by the dogs but also her own insecurities. In a moment of clarity, she realized that true transformation wasn't about becoming perfect, but about accepting her imperfections and learning from them. The arrival of Rufus brought forth a new set of challenges. The dog, haunted by past experiences, struggled to trust people. Emma remembered how she felt when she first met Charlie, and knew that patience and empathy were essential. However, when approaching Rufus for the first time, she hesitated. The dog's growl sent a chill down her spine, and the insecurity she thought she had overcome returned with a vengeance. But Emma decided she wouldn't let that fear dominate her. She sat on the floor, at a safe distance, and began to speak softly, offering treats. As the days passed, she learned to observe Rufus. He didn't need to be rushed. He needed understanding. This new approach not only helped Rufus open up but also made Emma feel more connected to her own vulnerability. With each small victory, like a curious glance from Rufus or a hesitant step toward her, Emma felt more confident. She began to understand that personal growth wasn't a destination but a continuous process. Each day at the shelter was an opportunity for growth, not just for the dogs but for herself. Donna Rosa's words echoed in her mind. You are becoming a natural leader." That validation not only encouraged her but also made her reflect on what it truly meant to be a leader. Over time, Emma began to understand that true leadership comes from the ability to listen and support others. She started applying this lesson in her interactions with the other volunteers. The friendship she had developed with Anna blossomed, and together they shared ideas and strategies. Anna, who always encouraged her to go further, became a fundamental pillar in her journey. Their friendship transformed into a source of mutual strength, where each learned from the other's insecurities. The lonely nights began to diminish. Emma now spent more time surrounded by people who supported her and understood the struggles she faced. However, moments of doubt still emerged. One night, after a day filled with frustrating attempts with Rufus, Emma found herself in a cycle of self-criticism. "I'm not good enough," she thought, feeling the weight of frustration. But instead of allowing herself to be consumed by those thoughts, she decided to write in a journal. The words flowing from her pen became a form of catharsis, allowing her to process her emotions. Through writing, Emma began to see her struggles from a new perspective. She realized that failure wasn't the opposite of success but part of it. Each mistake was an opportunity to learn. Reflecting on her challenges, she found new wisdom. Success, she realized, wasn't measured by material achievements but by the positive impact she could have on others' lives. As Emma applied these lessons in her life, her worldview began to change. She became more grateful for the small things and the connections she formed. The shelter was not just a workplace, it was a space for growth and discovery. In every dog's gaze, in every smile from a fellow volunteer, Emma saw the beauty of life unfolding around her. Over time, Rufus began to open up. He, who once growled and hid, now approached Emma cautiously but with curiosity. The connection they formed was a testament to the fact that love and patience can heal even the deepest wounds. And as she watched Rufus gradually transform into a more confident dog, Emma felt that she wasn't just helping an animal, but also helping herself. Emma had found a purpose at the shelter that went beyond the simple act of helping. She was becoming a stronger version of herself, capable of facing challenges with courage and compassion. The journey of overcoming that began with a storm was now leading her to a new horizon, where friendship, empathy, and love intertwined with every step she took. And so, she realized that life, with its adversities, is a constant opportunity for growth and transformation. Emma was at a pivotal moment in her journey at the animal shelter. Rufus, the dog who challenged her so much, seemed to be in a place of resistance, and each passing day was a constant struggle between trust and fear. She had made progress, but the true test of her inner strength was about to unfold. It was a rainy and stormy day, and the shelter was facing an emergency. Floodwaters were approaching, threatening to inundate the facilities. The volunteers were in a panic, rushing to move the animals to a safer location. Emma felt her heart race as the reality of the moment hit her. Rufus, who had taken significant steps toward trust, was now in a state of total alertness. The noise of the storm and the chaos around him left him paralyzed with fear. Emma knew that if she didn't act quickly, Rufus could get lost in the confusion or worse, get hurt. She looked around and saw the chaos unfolding. The other volunteers were busy trying to save the dogs, but Rufus was cornered, growling and trembling. It was as if the world around them was crumbling. And Emma realized she needed to face her greatest fear: the possibility of losing the connection she had built with Rufus. With the courage she had cultivated throughout her journey, Emma slowly approached. "Rufus, it's me," she said, trying to calm him with her soft voice. "We're in this together. Let's get out of here." He looked at her, confused and scared, but Emma didn't give up. She crouched down, keeping a safe distance while extending her hand with a treat. "Trust me, Rufus. I'm here to help you." His growling intensified, and Emma felt a chill in her stomach. But instead of succumbing to insecurity, she took a deep breath and remembered all the lessons she had learned. Love and patience were the keys to trust. With determination, She moved a little closer, maintaining her composure. I know you're scared, but we're in danger. We need to go now. After what felt like an eternity, Rufus hesitated. He looked at her with a mix of distrust and curiosity. Emma realized this was the crucial moment. If she wanted Rufus to trust her, she needed to be the leader she had learned to be. She stood up and began to walk slowly toward the exit, keeping her eyes fixed on him as if inviting him to follow her. With a hesitant step, Rufus emerged from his corner, and Emma's heart raced. He was doing it. With each step she took, he followed, hesitating but with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. When they reached the door, Emma paused and turned to him. Let's go together, Rufus. I'm here. With one last look, Rufus stepped forward and moved toward safety. Emma felt an immense relief wash over her. They ran to a higher space where other volunteers were already gathered, keeping the dogs safe. Rufus nestled beside Emma, and she realized he was no longer growling but looking at her with newfound understanding. The storm had been intense, but the bond they had formed had grown stronger. Emma had faced her greatest challenge, and in doing so, she discovered a strength she didn't know she possessed. Looking at Rufus, she saw not just a dog she had helped but a part of herself that was healing. As the storm passed, the shelter began to recover. Emma felt that not only had Rufus found safety, but she had also found her place in the world. The friendship she cultivated with Anna had solidified, and the shared experiences were now unbreakable ties. In that moment, Emma understood that failures and new beginnings were fundamental parts of her journey. She had learned that every challenge brought lessons and that true success was not in avoiding problems, but in facing them with love and courage. Life was a continuous learning experience, and friendship was what made that journey richer and more meaningful. The storm had passed, but Emma's determination and Rufus's trust were the true signs that transformation was complete. Emma smiled, feeling gratitude for every moment lived and for the new life she was building, not just for herself but for those around her. The journey of overcoming had no end. It was a path she was excited to walk, filled with new possibilities and discoveries. After the storm, the animal shelter began to reorganize itself. The water had receded, but the effects of the flooding were still visible. Emma, now alongside Rufus, felt a new sense of purpose. The fear that once paralyzed her, both regarding the dog and her own path, had dissipated. She watched the volunteers who, despite their exhaustion, worked together, demonstrating a spirit of unity and resilience. Rufus, who had once been a wary and frightened dog, now moved with more confidence. He approached other dogs and even interacted with some of the volunteers, which made Emma emotional. It was as if he was starting to understand that he had found a home, not just a temporary shelter. Seeing this transformation, Emma realized that in helping him, she was also helping herself. The barriers that once seemed insurmountable were being broken down. As everyone worked hard to clean up the aftermath of the flooding, Emma found Anna, her friend and fellow volunteer. They both sat in a corner, exhausted, but with a sparkle in their eyes. Anna asked, "Did you see how Rufus behaved during the storm?" With a smile on her face. "He really trusts you now." Emma nodded, feeling the warmth of the friendship that had grown between them. "Yes, I never thought I could. It was hard. But at that moment, I knew I had to be strong for him." The emotion in Emma's voice was palpable, and Anna hugged her. "You did more than that. You saved him, and, at the same time, saved yourself." These words echoed in Emma's mind. She realized that Rufus's struggle to trust people again mirrored her own journey. For so long, she had felt insecure and lost. But now, by facing her fears, she had found a new path. Emma smiled at Anna and said, "I think we are learning from each other." Time passed, and as days turned into weeks, the shelter was rebuilt. Rufus became one of the most beloved dogs in the place, and Emma was always by his side. She knew that the bond they had formed was special. He followed her around the shelter like a faithful companion, and it filled her with joy. One afternoon, while feeding the dogs, Emma noticed that Rufus was calmer. He lay down next to her, resting his head on her lap. She stroked his fur and reflected on how much her life had changed. "Rufus, you have taught me so much. I never imagined I could feel so close to an animal," she said. His gaze was serene, as if he understood every word. In that moment of silence, Emma remembered how many times she had hesitated to open herself up to new experiences. She recalled the people she had met at the shelter, the stories she had heard, and how, together, they had built a strong community. The shelter was not just a place for abandoned animals. It was a home for everyone, both humans and animals. The next day, Emma decided it was time to share her story. She organized a meeting with the volunteers and, feeling a bit nervous, began to speak about her journey with Rufus. "I learned that trust doesn't happen overnight. It's a process that requires patience, love, and courage," she said. "And more importantly, it's a journey worth taking." The volunteers listened attentively, and many found inspiration in her words. Anna smiled and asked, "Do you think Rufus has become a symbol of hope for all of us?" Emma smiled back. "Yes, and not just for us, but for all the animals here. Each one has a story and deserves a chance." The conversation turned into a moment of collective reflection, where everyone shared their experiences and challenges. Emma realized that together, they had created a space of healing and love not just for the animals, but for each of them. The shelter was now a place where everyone could grow, learn, and support each other. As time went on, Emma and Rufus became inseparable. Their friendship symbolized the transformation that had occurred not only in their lives but also in the entire community around them. Emma knew that the journey was not over. It was just the beginning of a new phase. And as she looked at Rufus, she felt a deep gratitude for every moment lived. Life, she realized, was a path full of challenges, but also of love, friendship, and hope. Emma watched Rufus lying beside her, his calm and confident gaze making her reflect on the transformation they had both undergone. The dog, who had once been a symbol of fear and distrust, now represented strength and hope, not only for him, but also for Emma and everyone around them. She remembered her own insecurities and the hesitation that accompanied her. Each day at the shelter, Emma learned to face her fears, to open herself to new experiences, and most importantly, to trust in herself. Emma's achievements were not just personal, they resonated throughout the shelter. Other volunteers began to realize that, just like Rufus, each animal had its own battles to fight, and each deserved a chance. The stories shared during those meetings became a beacon of hope, uniting everyone in a common purpose. Emma now understood that she was not alone on her journey. Everyone was fighting for something greater, for a better future for the animals and themselves. One day, while caring for Rufus, Emma made an important decision. She wanted to go beyond the shelter. She wanted Rufus's story and the transformation they had both experienced to reach more people. With the support of Anna and the other volunteers, Emma organized a community event, inviting the neighborhood to meet the dogs and hear the stories of overcoming adversity. She knew that each story had the power to touch hearts and inspire change. The day of the event arrived, and the shelter was full of life. Emma, with Rufus by her side, spoke about how friendship and trust can change lives. She saw people's eyes light up as they listened to her experiences and Rufus's journey. That connection, that ability to touch others, illuminated a new path for Emma. She felt alive, fulfilled, and above all, part of something much greater than herself. After the event, many people approached to volunteer and help the shelter. Emma realized that her actions, her courage to face her fears, and her willingness to share her story not only transformed her life, but also inspired others to do the same. Rufus, the dog who once trusted no one, was now a symbol of hope and resilience for the community. Over time, Emma became an advocate for animal rights, using her voice to promote change and raise awareness about the importance of adoption and caring for animals. She understood that true success was not in material achievements but in the ability to positively impact the lives of others. The friendship she had built with Rufus and the bonds she formed with the volunteers were her greatest treasures. Emma realized that life is made up of new beginnings. Each challenge faced, each fear overcome, took her to a place where trust and love were possible. She had become an example of resilience, inspiring others to find their own strength. With Rufus by her side, she knew that the journey would never end, but that each step taken toward love and hope was a step in the right direction. The story of Emma and Rufus serves as a powerful reminder that, even in adversity, transformation is possible, that everyone has the power to change their own life and the lives of others. And, just like Emma, anyone can find strength and courage in their experiences. If you have faced challenges, share your story in the comments. Let's create a network of support and inspiration together, and don't forget to like and subscribe, as every interaction helps bring more stories that can touch and change lives. It's time to take action and make a difference. Now, I want to hear from you. What moment in this story touched your emotions the most? Was it when Emma found herself alone and trapped, or when the unexpected happened and her life began to change? Leave your comment down below. Your opinion is very important to us. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story of overcoming and transformation, share the video with them. Let's spread messages that touch the heart and inspire change together. If you want to follow more exciting stories full of twists and turns, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you'll be the first to know when a new emotional adventure goes live. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story that will move you in ways you can't even imagine.